Cool. My name is Julie Peterson. I'm an exhibit developer at the History Colorado Center, and my friend Kimberly and I are going to talk to you a little bit about how to make exhibits, which is what we do all the time at the museum. So Kimberly, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Kimberly. I am the Exhibits and Loan Registrar. My job is to make sure that the objects, when they go on display at an exhibit, are safe and sound.
So we're going to tell you a little bit about what an exhibit is, what objects are, and how to make your own exhibit today. So what is an exhibit? An exhibit is a way of telling stories using objects. So when you hear a story or when you read a story, you're learning about something with words and maybe with pictures if you're reading a book. But an exhibit allows you to tell a story about something in particular, and you use objects to do that. And exhibits are mostly in museums, but they can also be anywhere you have a collection of objects, like your house. So Kimberly is going to talk to you about what objects are.
Great. Objects are anything that are made by someone or that you make. So, for example, a book, an object. Here's a book that I have today. A book is an object. We could talk about, I have a bracelet. A bracelet is an object. We could talk about something that I make. I make art. That could be an object. Objects when they're of things that have, like, we call them natural, and that's things that we're living, or they are from outside, like rocks, plants, animals. We call them specimens. And so specimens can be objects too.
So all exhibits have a big idea. So what is a big idea? The big idea is what you want people to learn from your exhibit. So Kimberly and I are going to show you a few examples of what a big idea about an exhibit could be. And today you're going to make an exhibit about you. So we're going to ask you, what is one thing that you want people to learn about you? So when you go to an exhibit, the exhibit is going to have a big idea, which is the main thing that you want people to learn from the exhibit. So think about it for now. We're going to ask you to get some objects in a few minutes, but what's one thing that you want people to learn about you? So you can think about that for a few minutes now. And in the meantime, Kimberly and I are going to tell you the big ideas of our exhibits that we are putting together today.
So I've decided that I want people to know that my favorite color is blue. And I thought that I would keep it really simple. I love the color blue. So that's my big idea. I want people to know that my favorite color is blue. So what are the ways that I can show people why my favorite color is blue?
So my big idea for the exhibit that I'm creating today is that baking makes me feel connected to people I love. So all the things that Kimberly and I are going to include in our exhibits today are going to relate to this big idea. So for me, I'm going to show you how baking makes me feel connected to the people that I love. And Kimberly is going to show you how her favorite color is blue.
So when you think about your big idea, the reason we ask you to do one big idea is because there's just a lot of information out there, and you can make things relate to that one big idea in really interesting ways. And so we challenge you to think about one big idea. So right now, when you're thinking about it, what's your big idea? So we're going to talk through why we chose the objects we chose, but just for now, just think about what's your big idea.
And like Kimberly, your big idea can be something that is your favorite thing. You can talk about why, maybe what is your favorite sport? That might be a good thing for a big idea for an exhibit. Or maybe you could think about where your family comes from. Maybe you could talk about if you are not from the US or if you're from a different state than Colorado, maybe you could talk about why you came to Colorado.
Miss Julie, can we have more than one big idea?
So for a really good exhibit, you want it to have one big idea only because you want people to learn really in depth about one thing. And so you can have more than one object, which we'll talk about. We're going to ask you to pick a couple of objects to help you tell your big idea, but you really only want one main big idea. So hopefully everybody has an idea, one big idea that they want to make their exhibit about. And now we're going to ask you to look for 3 objects that help people learn about your big idea. So before you run around and grab some objects, Kimberly and I are going to talk about the objects that we're using in our exhibit so that you can get an idea of what kinds of things might help you tell your big idea.
So I picked 3 objects today that all relate to the color blue. So my first object is a book called The Daring Book for Girls. And this color blue, I love this color blue. This is such an exciting color of blue. And the reason that I chose this object is because this blue makes me curious to learn more. I also have a silver and blue bracelet, and I showed you guys this earlier. This silver and blue bracelet makes me feel happy because it reminds me of the time when I was traveling in Italy. This also has some really fun sparkles on it too, and I just like that as an added bonus. So the other thing that I have actually, it's a little, this is an object too. So this is just a color that I put on a piece of paper this morning. And I love this color blue because it makes me feel creative. This color blue excites me to try and be creative. The part of the reason why my favorite color is blue is because it makes me feel things. And I want people to appreciate all the different things that I feel and what I feel when I'm experiencing the color blue. So maybe that's something that you could be thinking about. If you're talking about your favorite things, what do those favorite things make you feel?
Thanks, Kimberly. So the 3 objects that I chose relate to why I feel connected to people that I love through baking. So the first thing I have is my grandma's box of recipes. So it's kind of big, and I don't know if you can, here we go. The background makes it funny. So this box of recipes has all of my grandma's, all the recipes that she used, especially some of my favorite ones from my childhood, including her brownies recipe, which are the best brownies in the world. And then the next object that I have might be hard to show you as well because it's kind of big. I don't know if you can see it. So this is a cake tin. It's like a magic cake tin right now because it's disappearing.
Try covering it over your face, Julie. Let's see if you can see it better if it's over here.
Can you see it now?
No.
There we go. Okay.
There we go.
So it's hard to see, but this is a cake tin that you put birthday cakes and stuff in. And my mom gave this to me, and it makes me think of all the special occasions where I've made cakes for friends and family. And then the other thing that explains why baking makes me feel connected to my family, to people that I love, is this apron that I made. And my best friend and I made these aprons together. And every time I bake anything, whether it's just for me and my family or whether it's for friends, I wear this apron and it makes me think of all the treats I've made for people that I love. So now you've had some examples of what objects can help you tell your big idea. So you're going to take just a few minutes and gather a couple of those objects. And then we're going to tell you how to write labels for those objects to create an exhibit. So just take a few minutes and grab your 3 objects that will help you tell your big idea. I see some people showing their objects. That's pretty awesome. If you want to type in the chat what your big ideas are, that would be cool too. You guys have some great big ideas, from different sports to thinking about plants. Giraffes, those are great animals. So hopefully you guys have 3 objects that can help you tell your big idea. So Kimberly and I now are going to tell you a little bit about how to write labels to help people understand how those objects tell the main idea. So first we want to explain a little bit about what labels are. So labels, like I said, help you understand a little bit about the objects that are in your exhibit. And you want people to, if the point of an exhibit is for people to learn your big idea, you want your labels to be short and readable, and you want the most important information first. And you always want your labels to relate to the big idea. And then finally, in an exhibit, you want to include information about the object itself. So one way we do this is to use one sentence to talk about how the object you've chosen relates to your big idea. So Kimberly and I are going to share a couple of examples of our labels that we wrote for our objects, so that you can think about one sentence that helps explain how your object relates to your big idea. Do you want to share yours, Kimberly, your sentences?
Sure, absolutely. I will happily share. So, like I said, the reason that my favorite color is blue is because of the way it makes me feel. And I want people to appreciate why it's my favorite color. So when I think about this book, I'm going to say that I've enjoyed reading this book, but the thing that I want people to get is that the color of the cover got me. So I'm going to say something like, this color blue makes me feel curious to learn more about what makes girls daring. This color blue makes me feel curious to learn more about what makes girls daring. And when I think about my bracelet, I think about how there's so many happy memories tied to this bracelet. I got it at a market in Italy. So I might say, this color blue, the blue featured in this bracelet reminds me of the happy times that I had in Italy. These colors of blue, or this bracelet with blue, reminds me of the happy times I had in Italy. And if we think about my little doodle sketch here, I can say I enjoyed coloring with this blue because it made me feel creative. I like this color blue because it makes me feel creative. Or this color blue helps me feel creative. That might be a better sentence.
Yeah, so you can see Kimberly is talking about the way that blue makes her feel, and that's how we learn about why it's her favorite color. So for me, the objects that I have, my grandma's recipe box, it reminds me of all of my favorite memories with my grandma growing up. So this recipe box contains many of my favorite memories of cooking with my grandma. So this recipe box contains many of my favorite memories of cooking with my grandma. If we're thinking about my invisible cake tin, this makes me think of all of the special occasions that I've shared with friends and family. So my cake tin reminds me of all the special occasions I've shared with my friends and family. And then my apron reminds me of all of the times I've baked treats for people I love. So my apron reminds me of all of the times I've baked treats for people that I love. So these are some examples of sentences that relate to the big idea and your object. So you can keep thinking about those, but the other aspect of writing a label for an object is describing the object. So we're going to show you what you need to have on an object label.
So when we display an object, when we have an object label, we always want to make sure that we have our big idea sentence first, but we also want to include information about the object. So, for example, if the object has a title, like this book is called The Daring Book for Girls. So I would want to make sure that I make the title of my object The Daring Book for Girls. But if it's something like my bracelet, it doesn't have a title, it's not a piece of art, it's not a book. We can just call it bracelet. It doesn't have to be my bracelet, it's just a bracelet. And we also want to include the date when the object was made or when it was used or when it created significance for you. So sometimes the reason we want to know the dates are because it helps us understand the context around why you chose an object. So I don't know when this bracelet was made, but I know that I got it in 2008. So that's a date that's related to my significance, right? Because I got this I got it in 2007. So for me, this would be a bracelet from 2007. That's when I started owning it. But my book actually has a published date. And I can look inside my book, and it's usually the page with all that small writing. See if you can see it. I don't know if you can see it. All the small writing. And usually towards the bottom, it'll tell you what the date was. And this particular one, I can tell you, was actually, funnily enough, made in 2007. So I guess some important things around blue happened in 2007. But I made this little thing this morning. So that happened in 2020. So we also want to talk about who created the object, because it's important that if you didn't make it, if someone else did, that we credit them. So this book, Daring Book for Girls, was made by Andrea J. Buchanan and Miriam Peskowitz. Excuse me. Sorry, Miriam. But I made this little doodle. So I would be the creator. The other thing we want to talk about is the material, because when you're at a museum, you can't touch the objects like I'm touching now. I can touch all these objects, but in a museum, you can't always touch them. So we want to make sure people understand and appreciate what it's made of. So this is made of paper and paint. But this bracelet is made of metal. And actually, I don't know if you can see, but it's actually sequins and beads. So it'd be metal, sequins, and beads. So that is an example of all the different kinds of information you put into a label. And when you write the big idea sentence, that's an actual sentence, like a proper sentence. Yeah. But the title, date, creator, and material, that can just be 1 or 2 words. It does not have to be a full sentence.
So I'm going to show you now an example of the label that I made for my apron that has exactly what Kimberly is talking about, so that you can use it when you're making your labels. So my big idea sentence is for my apron is that my best friend and I made aprons together, and whenever I wear this one, I think of her and other friends I've made treats for. That's my big idea sentence. It relates to why baking makes me feel connected to people I love. And then in the bottom, I have what it is. So the title is Apron. It was made in 2009. It's made out of cotton, and I made it. So my name is there. So this is a really good example of the labels that you can make for your objects. So now it's time to put your objects on display in an exhibit. So once you've chosen your 3 objects that relate to your big idea, and you've made your labels, and you guys can take some time after we're done here to finish up writing your labels and making your exhibit, you want to put it on display in a way that people can really clearly see it. So Kimberly, do you want to talk about what we think about when we put objects on display in a museum?
Absolutely, I'd love to. So one of the things, like your big idea sentence about how we put the most important information first, we also want to put our most important information on the object. So it makes sense for me to display the front cover of this book because of the color blue. It would not make sense for me to display the book open, where you can see it. Oh, there we go. It would not make sense for me to display the book open because you couldn't see the color blue. But if I wanted to feature a story in the book, if one of my favorite things was actually about Hedy Lamarr, which is what I just opened this page to, she was a spy and an actress, then I would want to open up the book to this particular page. The other thing that we think about is we talk about objects whether or not they're safe and the environment they live in. And so we don't want to put objects in direct sunlight. So oftentimes you'll go into a museum and it'll feel like it's darker because there's no windows. But for you guys, it's okay if you have windows, because obviously, like, these are objects in your house. They live in the sun all the time, but we try not to put them in direct sunlight. The other thing we do is we put them on display, like on boxes, or we put them on display in a special corner because we want people to see how it's different than when it's just sitting on the shelf. So for example, I might put this book and the bracelet and my little artwork on the kitchen table so my roommate can actually see my exhibit and see that there's a little display, so I could put the book and the bracelet and the artwork out together, and I could have their labels sort of displayed next to them. We also want to make sure the labels are displayed near the objects so you know what your big idea is talking about. And that way people know and can see that, oh, that's different than how it normally is.
So now that you guys have all chosen your objects and you have your big idea and you're working on writing labels, you can go and finish up and create your own exhibits. So have fun making exhibits, and thanks for letting us share what we do with you. Have a good day, guys.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you all. So just to be mindful of time, we have just about a minute left. So if folks can hang out and have any questions for Julie and Kimberly, if you want to show your little displays to us, or if you have any other questions, we can do that now. Otherwise, thank you again for coming, and we'll see you next week. Remember to keep some recycling because we'll be making journals next week too. So if you have cardboard or cool paper, those photos, make sure to hold on to those things. Does anyone have any questions that are staying on the call or anything that you all want to share? I don't see any hands. Oh, I see Adeline has a question. Do you all want to be unmuted or ask it in the chat? I'm going to unmute you, okay?
Okay. What do you put on the labels?
Oh, yeah. Do you all mind recapping kind of how to do the label?
Yeah, so for your labels, you want to write one sentence that relates to your big idea. So whatever your exhibit is about, whatever you want people to learn about you, your one sentence about your object should relate to that big idea. So for me, my big idea is that baking makes me feel connected to people that I love. So my label about my apron says that I made my apron with my best friend, and whenever I wear it, I think of all the treats I've made for people that I love. So you have a little connection to your big idea, and then as Kimberly was explaining, you have information about your object itself. I'm going to pull up the screen that has the list of what the labels say really quickly so you can see it. So these are the things that you want in an object label.
Awesome. Do we have any other questions or anything else that folks want to share? I don't see any hands. Seems like we're good. Well, we'll leave this label thing up real quick in case anyone wants to take a photo of it or write it down. And then we'll see you next week.
Thanks, friends.
Thank you.